Hello everyone and welcome to this new video tutorial. Today we will be unwrapping our headphones. So let's jump into mine. So to be able to explain what we're going to go through, and I suppose that you've already watched the video introduction to the basics to UV Unwrap using Maya 2020. So if you did, you will understand where we're going here. What I did to be able to explain the process is that I already unwrapped this side of my headphones and unwrapped this wire. Now what is the difference here? Let's go up and select this and open my UV editor right here. So you will see that we applied here an unwrap for different faces for them to fit. Now what is the checker map here? The checker map represents the position of your UVs, which means that when you will apply your texture, it will fit perfectly on that object because you have a proper positioning of your UVs on that map. So you will use a checker map to represent not only the various colors, but the shape of our unwrap. What I mean by that, if I go select this object, or part of my object, and isolate it, when I'm going to go in the front view, let me frame, you will notice that my checker is squarey pretty much everywhere except here where there was a seam. So if it's squarey, that means my texture will be applied properly. Two things that you need to avoid when you're doing unwrap and are causing problems after that. The first one, if I go back here to my UV editor and go to my UVs, so I'm going to select a couple of vertices here and move them. So I'm going to deform that shape. I'll do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'll go to my whole UV shell here, and I will basically kind of deform it. Now that it's deformed, look at my squares. My squares became rectangles. So everywhere where it became a rectangle, I will have some texture stretching, which means that my texture is not going to apply properly. Look at this area. This is a bad unwrap. It's a bad unwrap because you have all of that deformation around, which means that your texture, rather than being perfectly assigned to its position, it will be completely deformed. So that's the first thing. And while I'm going to hit Control Z, you will see my textures coming back to place and getting back properly clean. Why? Because I've created a proper shell. Now what is a shell? The object here will be split into shells that you will create. Each shell represents one element here in my view. Now finally, the next thing to remember is, look where I applied my checker map. My checker map is only applied to this area here, or this island. One of the things that you cannot do, that wouldn't work, that's one of the most horrible things that might happen to you, is to have, for example, your object overlapping between two islands. Right here is not going to make that much of a difference because in reality I'm seeing a texture right here. But if I go back to my different views, what I'm going to end up with is when I'm going to export this this island here, I will only have half of that object because you will be exporting only that square here, and this is where everything happens. So all of your shells must remain within each square. As I said previously, for painting softwares, you might be able to use more than one shell. But even if I use this one as well as this one, I still cannot, let me turn that here, I still cannot basically mix it between the two of them. The error would be to have my object in between the two of them. It can be in this one, it can be in this one, it can be in the third one depending on the software. I believe it can go up to 7 in certain softwares. Each island will contain its objects, but you cannot overlap it. So you cannot go and basically turn off your sorry, not turn off your texture, but apply it in the middle because you will be painting each time and every square. So, two things to remember: avoid stretching. first and second remain always in the same island. Now let me hide my UV editor here and show you what I did to be able to unwrap this side. Now as you've noticed, the difference between this one is that all of my UVs are perfectly aligned, but look at this. This piece haven't been unwrapped. And look at that deformation. That means my texture will be stretched. I cannot put there a name, a brand, or something, or text here. I cannot do anything here. While on this one, I'll be able to put some information in the front side here, maybe add some data here on it, and scratches maybe. Now, this is perfectly unwrapped. This is perfectly unwrapped. This is not. I'm talking about this square. And if I look at the other side, look how my texture is applied now on this object that doesn't have UVs. It's all messed up. So what we're going to do is that we'll rebuild everything that I did here on the other side. And before I move there, same thing with my wires. If I get where they're close to each other, somewhere here, let me frame that like that. Let's go back to object mode, and you will notice that my cube is unwrapped. Maybe there is some adjustments that I need to put here. This wire is, so I can apply a nice texture, but this one is not. So let's jump into the various steps to follow to UV Unwrap.